Flat tire? The man asked, crouching beside the sleek black SUV on the side of Route 39, sweat clinging to his brow as the late afternoon sun beat down. Verena Nolan glanced up from the tire iron she'd been holding awkwardly like a foreign object. She was in heels, a tailored pencil skirt, and a silk blouse that probably cost more than the rusted pickup truck parked behind her. "I think it's dead," she said, brushing hair from her face. "I tried the YouTube video, but it turns out I learn best by someone physically showing me." The man stood and wiped his hands on his jeans. He was tall, built like a man who worked with his hands, and wore a faded navy t-shirt that clung to his broad chest. His boots were scuffed, his jawline dusted with stubble, and his eyes kind, tired, warm met hers. "Nash Zeller," he said, offering a hand. "You're lucky I just dropped my kid off at school and got off work early." "Verena," she replied, shaking his hand. "Thanks for stopping. I've never changed a tire before." He gave a low chuckle. "Well, you're about to learn from the best unpaid teacher in town." She watched as he dropped to his knees beside the car and began loosening the lug nuts with practiced ease. "So, you've got a daughter?" she asked. "Son, Archer, he's 6. Wild little guy, obsessed with dinosaurs and peanut butter sandwiches." Something about the way he said it proud, with a softness that made her chest squeeze, struck her. "You a single dad?" "Yeah," he said, not looking up. "His mom left when he was 2, said she wasn't built for small-town life or parenthood. I guess I was too broke, too boring." Verena bit her lip. Her stilettos dug into the gravel, and she shifted uncomfortably. "That's awful." He shrugged, standing to hoist the spare from her trunk. "Nah, it gave me Archer. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. Work construction, jobs during the day, and drive for a delivery app at night. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the lights on." She nodded, her heart squeezing tighter. "That's really admirable." "Not really," he said, flashing her a small grin. "Just survival." In 15 minutes, he had the new tire on and was tightening the bolts. "There," he said, standing and stretching his back. "Good as new, now you try." "What?" she blinked. "You said you wanted to learn. I'm not letting you get away that easy." So she followed his instructions awkwardly, stumbling through the steps, kneeling in her expensive clothes, grease smudging her wrist. He was patient, hands guiding hers, correcting her grip, making her laugh when she fumbled the jack. When they were done, she was sweaty and filthy. He looked at her, amused. "You just did your first tire change. Pretty badass." She grinned, "Thanks to you." He grabbed a half-empty water bottle from his truck and offered it. "You're welcome, and you'll never get stranded again." She hesitated, then said, "Can I buy you lunch, to say thank you?" He looked surprised. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," she insisted. "There's a diner 10 minutes from here. You helped me, I want to return the favor." He finally nodded. "All right, but only if they still have the peach pie." They ended up at a small roadside diner with peeling vinyl seats and laminated menus. He ordered a burger and fries. She got a grilled cheese and tomato soup, and 2 slices of peach pie. "So," he said, sipping his iced tea, "what do you do, Verena?" She paused. Her company, VNX Technologies, had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal in Singapore. She'd been on her way back from a board meeting, but the last thing she wanted was to watch him flinch at the word CEO. "Consulting," she said simply. "Mostly tech startups." "Sounds like you're smart," he said, smiling. "Figures." She blushed. "You're not so bad yourself." Their conversation stretched over an hour. They laughed about Archer's obsession with naming every dinosaur from memory, and about the time Verena accidentally deleted a company server trying to fix a printer jam. Nash was funny, a little gruff, but gentle in a way most men with his build weren't. And he listened, not just nodded, but actually listened. Back in the parking lot, as she opened her car door, he said, Hey, I know it's probably weird, but had a good time, you're easy to talk to. I felt the same, she admitted, surprising herself. I don't usually connect with people this fast. He scratched the back of his neck. I don't either, but if you ever need help changing another tire or just want to grab coffee, I'd like that. She smiled. I'd like that too. They exchanged no numbers, no promises, but they both left the diner changed. The next week, she found herself driving past the elementary school just as it let out. She didn't know why, maybe curiosity, maybe something else, but when she spotted Nash's pickup in the lot, she parked across the street. She watched him exit the school doors holding hands with a tiny brunette boy with a backpack bigger than his torso. Nash knelt as Archer chattered, animatedly showing him something in his notebook. Nash listened, nodded, then hoisted the boy onto his shoulders like a superhero. Verena felt something shift in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't approach them, she just sat there smiling. 2 days later, she returned to the same diner, not by accident. And Nash was there, sitting at the counter with a newspaper and coffee. He looked up, startled, then smiled. Hey. Thought I might run into you, she said, sliding onto the stool beside him. You stalking me now? He teased. Maybe a little. He laughed. Well, I'm off the hook tonight. Archer's at his grandma's. Want to sit and split a slice of peach pie with a broke dad? She looked into his eyes and nodded. Yeah, I do. That night, they sat in his truck parked under the stars outside the diner, peach pie between them, radio low. I don't know what this is, he said after a few minutes of silence, but I like it. Me too, she whispered. He looked over at her, the streetlight catching in his eyes. You're not like anyone I've ever met. She smiled. Neither are you. And when he leaned in and kissed her, slow and sure, like she was something rare, something precious Verena knew. She was falling, and she didn't want to stop. I brought you something, Verena said, holding out a small white paper bag that crinkled in her hand. Nash looked up from the tailgate of his truck where he was tightening bolts on an aluminum ladder. His brows lifted. What is it? Try it and see. He wiped his hands on a rag and accepted the bag, peeking inside. No way, he said, pulling out a chewy oatmeal cookie the size of his palm. You remembered. You mentioned once that your grandmother used to make them, she said, leaning on the edge of the truck bed. Found a bakery near my place that makes them almost exactly the way you described. He took a bite, then closed his eyes for a beat. That's dangerously close. Might be the best cookie I've had in years. I'll take that as a win. He glanced over at her. You really didn't have to go out of your way. I didn't, she said, brushing a leaf off her coat. I was already in the area. Were you? He asked, a little amused. She grinned. No, I wasn't. A soft breeze passed between them, rustling the tarp covering the truck bed. It was late afternoon, and the air smelled like cut wood and gasoline. The sun filtered through the trees hanging over the gravel lot where Nash kept his tools and supplies locked in a weathered storage container. She liked the smell of it, real, unfiltered, grounding. You always this generous with people who fix your tires? Nash asked, folding the bag and setting it beside him. Only the ones who share their pie. He chuckled, then stood and stretched his arms over his head. Archer's with his cousin today. My sister picks him up from school on Thursdays so he can play with her twins. Gives me a couple extra hours to finish jobs. You have a big family. Not really, just my sister and her husband. They live a few blocks away. My dad passed a few years back, and my mom's in a care facility now, early onset dementia. I'm sorry, Verena said gently. He shook his head. It's okay, we visit her on weekends. Archer likes to bring her drawings. She doesn't always remember who he is, but she smiles every time. Sounds like he got your heart. More than I had to give, honestly. They stood there for a moment, the silence stretching comfortably. I've been thinking, Verena said, looking down at the dust on her boots. Would you ever want to come into the city? There's a street festival this weekend, live music, food trucks, a pop-up planetarium. You could bring Archer. Nash raised a brow. You want to hang out with a 6-year-old and his dad while he talks about dinosaurs and eats overpriced cotton candy. Yeah, she said, I really do. He studied her like he was still trying to figure her out. All right, but I'm warning you, he doesn't just like dinosaurs, he lives and breathes them. I'll bring my A game. That Saturday, Verena arrived at the festival with 2 dinosaur-themed hats tucked under her arm, one for Archer, one for Nash. The boy greeted her like they were old friends, rattling off facts about Triceratops while Nash attempted to keep up. He said you work with robots, Archer told her as they walked past a booth selling kettle corn. Sort of, she said, adjusting her sunglasses. Help people build things that work like robots. Can you build a dinosaur robot? Probably, but I'd need your help designing it. Archer's eyes lit up. Nash looked over at her from behind his son, something unreadable in his expression. They spent the afternoon wandering between tents, trying Korean tacos and mango slushies, watching a fire juggler, and getting temporary tattoos. Verena didn't glance at her phone once, not when it buzzed in her purse, not when she noticed the red notification light blinking. For the first time in weeks, she felt completely present. Later, they found a patch of grass near the stage and lay back to watch the pop-up planetarium show projected onto a large dome. Archer curled beside Nash, his head resting on his dad's chest, already half asleep. Verena sat beside them, her knees drawn up, watching the stars shift across the screen overhead. You're good with him, she said quietly. Nash looked over. I'm just figuring it out as I go. You're doing more than that. He didn't answer at first. Then, you're really not what I expected. What do you expect? I don't know. You dress like someone who belongs in a corner office, but you eat grilled cheese in diners and chase kids around street fairs. You bring cookies and dinosaur hats. You surprise me. She turned toward him. Maybe you're just used to people being less interested. Probably, he said, voice low. People tend to take one look at me and decide I'm not worth much. Then they're blind. He held her gaze for a moment, then looked away. Verena, he said after a beat, I don't want to assume anything, but this whatever's happening between us, it's moving fast. I know. And you've got your life. Your world is probably nothing like mine. You're right, she said softly, but I don't care. He gave a small, almost wary laugh. You say that now. I say that because it's true. He looked back at her, and this time there was something raw in his eyes. I don't have room for games, not with Archer. Can't bring someone into his life who's gonna walk out of it. I'm not here to play games. You don't even know what I can't give you. Maybe you don't want anything but this, right now. Nash stared at her like he was seeing something new, then he nodded slowly. Okay. They didn't kiss, not with Archer between them. But something deeper passed in that moment, an unspoken promise neither of them dared to say aloud. The next day, she invited them both to her apartment for dinner. Nash hesitated at the doorstep, taking in the building's marble entryway and doorman. You live here? He asked, glancing up at the towering structure. For now, she said casually. He didn't press, but she could feel the questions hanging between them. She wasn't ready to answer them, not yet. Inside, Archer ran straight to the balcony and pressed his face to the glass. We're so high up. Don't worry, Verena said. The windows are reinforced. Nash followed slowly, taking in the high ceilings, the abstract art, the open kitchen with its polished counters. This place is nice. She opened the fridge. I ordered takeout, hope you like Thai. You didn't cook. I know my limits. Over dinner, they laughed over Archer's attempt to use chopsticks and debated whether dragons could exist if dinosaurs had. Nash relaxed, slowly, visibly, though his eyes kept drifting to the apartment's details: the sleek lighting, the curated shelves, the framed certificate on the edge of her desk that she'd forgotten to hide. She caught the moment he noticed it, his gaze freezing on the embossed lettering that read VNX Technologies founder and CEO, Verena Nolan. He didn't say anything right away. Not until Archer was asleep on the couch, curled up with a blanket she'd pulled from her linen closet. You're the Verena Nolan, he said quietly. She took a slow breath. Yes. He turned toward the window, hands braced on his hips. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to be treated differently. I wouldn't have. You would have, everyone does. He looked at her, eyes sharper now. You lied. No, she said, I just waited. He shook his head. You let me think you lived like me, that we were on the same page. I never said didn't have money. I just didn't want it to define anything. And yet here we are, he muttered. Verena stepped closer. This doesn't change how I feel about you or Archer. I didn't want my life to intimidate you. You think I'm intimidated? A little, yes. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once. I don't care how much money you have. What I care about is whether I can trust you. You can. Then why did you hide it? Because I liked being with you without the label, without the assumptions. He looked down at the floor, then back at her. This is a lot. I know. He glanced at his sleeping son. I need some time. She nodded. Take it. He didn't say goodbye, just scooped Archer into his arms and carried him out the door. And for the first time since she met him, Verena felt something like panic bloom in her chest. Because this time, she might have actually lost something she couldn't buy back. The knock came just past 7 on a Thursday evening, soft but certain. Verena froze in the middle of her kitchen, one hand still wrapped around a glass of red wine she hadn't touched. She hadn't expected to hear from Nash again, not this soon. Not after the way he'd left. She opened the door slowly, unsure of what waited on the other side. You didn't answer your phone, he said, standing there with his hands in the pockets of a worn brown jacket. His eyes searched hers, not angry, just tired. I figured you needed space. I did, he said, then glanced down the hallway like he was making sure no one else was watching. But also needed to say something, and I didn't want to do it over the phone. She stepped back to let him in. Archer. With my sister, they're making cookies. Told him I had to run an errand. Nash walked in slowly, his eyes not sweeping the apartment this time, not taking in the expensive rugs or the city skyline. He just watched her, his jaw tense, like he was fighting with himself internally. I owe you an apology, he said finally. No, you don't. I do, he insisted. I walked out without listening. I let my pride get in the way of what we were building. That's on me. Verena set her wine down, the glass trembling slightly. You were blindsided. I should have told you sooner. He shook his head. I get why you didn't. I really do. When I saw that certificate, it was like the floor dropped out. I thought I knew who you were, and then suddenly I didn't. I'm still the same person. I know that now, but it messed with my head. I've spent my whole life fighting to be enough for people, and then I met you. She crossed her arms, not defensively, but to hold herself together. What are you saying? I'm saying you make me feel like I can be more. Not because of the money, not because of the suit or the apartment or the titles, but because you saw me. and you didn't flinch. Verena's throat tightened. I've been trying to protect Archer from disappointment, from people who say one thing and mean another, but I realized something this week. You never promised me anything. You didn't lie. You just let me see the parts of you I was ready for. She stepped closer. So what now? I want to try again, if you'll have me. Even knowing who I am. Especially knowing who you are. She exhaled slowly, like she hadn't taken a proper breath in days. Then stay. He didn't move. I have to be up early tomorrow. Roofing job in the next town over, but I'll stay if you want me to. I do. He took a step forward, then stopped. Also want to make something clear. I'm not intimidated by your life. I'm proud of what you've built, but I want to make sure you're not trying to rescue me. I'm not here to rescue you, Nash. I'm here because I like who I'm with you. That was enough. He closed the distance between them and kissed her not like the first time, tentative and unsure, but with intention. With weight. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Can I take you out this weekend? My treat. She raised an eyebrow. You're going to plan a date. Yeah, he said, grinning faintly. Old school style, no penthouses, no champagne, just me, you, and maybe a beat-up truck. I'd like that. And one condition. Name it. You let me pay. She nodded. Deal. The date came that Saturday. Nash picked her up in his truck, the same one she'd seen him fix ladders on and haul lumber in. He'd cleaned it. She could tell the dashboard had been wiped down, and the back seat was cleared of fast food wrappers. He wore a flannel shirt tucked into jeans, and he brought her a small bouquet of wildflowers wrapped in a brown paper napkin. They're from my sister's backyard, he said as he handed them to her. Don't worry, she won't miss them. She laughed and accepted the flowers, holding them like they were the most precious thing she'd ever received. He drove them to a small town an hour east, one that had a lakefront path and a row of old shops with wooden signs and chipped paint. They got ice cream, walked barefoot along the pier, and sat on a bench watching ducks fight over breadcrumbs. This is where I used to bring Archer when he was a baby, Nash said, passing her a bottle of water. He'd fall asleep in the carrier, and I'd sit right here trying to figure out how the hell I was going to do any of it. You figured it out. Not really, I just kept showing up. She leaned her head on his shoulder. That's enough. They didn't rush the day. They wandered through a used bookstore where Verena found a first-edition copy of a poetry collection she loved. Nash bought it for her without hesitation, slipping it into her tote bag when she wasn't looking. Later, after the sun dipped low and painted the lake in streaks of fire, they sat on the tailgate of his truck sipping ginger beer from glass bottles. Verena swung her legs over the edge and glanced at him. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why haven't you dated anyone since Archer's mom left? He looked out at the water. I tried, once or twice, but it never felt right. Most people weren't interested in the whole package. They liked the idea of me, but not the reality. And me. You didn't flinch when he spilled juice on your couch, he said, glancing over at her. You made him feel like he mattered. That's not nothing. She reached for his hand. He does matter. Nash turned toward her. You matter too. The night ended with a kiss in the parking lot under a flickering street lamp. Slow, certain. The following week, Verena invited them both to an exhibit at an interactive science museum. Archer ran from display to display, dragging Nash and Verena behind him, laughing so loud people turned to watch. Nash didn't seem to care. He laughed too. Afterward, they sat in the museum cafe, Archer munching on a soft pretzel. Verena reached for her wallet, but Nash stopped her. I've got it. Nash. I told you, he said. My treat. She let him. That night, after Archer had gone to bed in the guest room, Verena had quietly converted into a space just for him dinosaurs on the walls, a beanbag in the corner, a bookshelf full of kid-friendly science kits. Nash lingered in the hallway. "You didn't have to do all that," he said, nodding toward the room. "I wanted him to feel at home here." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're not just dating me anymore. You know that, right?" "I've known that since the day he told me what a velociraptor's claw looked like in detail." Nash smiled, but then his expression shifted. "Serious. I need to be honest with you about something." Verena's breath caught. "Okay." "I've been offered a promotion. Site manager. Bigger projects, steadier income, but it's in another county, about an hour away." Her heart sank. "When would you start?" "Month from now. They'd help with relocation." She nodded, arms crossed. "And you're thinking of taking it?" "I was, until you." Verena stepped closer. "You don't have to stay because of me." "I know, but don't want to leave either. Not when things are just starting to make sense." She placed a hand on his chest. "We'll figure it out together." He exhaled. "I want to stay, but also want to be able to give Archer more. I'm tired of scraping by every month." "Then take the job," she said. "We'll make the distance work. It's only an hour." "You drive that far?" "I'd fly across the country if it meant seeing you." He kissed her then, with more urgency than before, as if the decision had already been made. And in that moment, Verena knew this wasn't just a passing thing. This was a future. Even if it looked different than she'd imagined. Even if it came with scraped knees and peanut butter fingerprints and middle-of-the-night phone calls. She was all in. And she wasn't going anywhere. The air was heavy with the scent of fresh, cut grass and spring rain the day Nash climbed the scaffolding for what would be his final inspection on the job site. The promotion was official. Contract signed. He'd be managing a larger crew in a nearby county, starting the following Monday. It wasn't just a raise, it was a new chapter. One he'd fought hard for, one he wouldn't be walking into alone. As he secured the last bolt on the rooftop panel, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He climbed down, wiping his hands on his jeans before answering. "Hey," Verena's voice danced through the speaker, warm and unhurried. "I know you're working late, but I was wondering if you and Archer are free tomorrow night. I want to show you something." He leaned against the truck, glancing up at the overcast sky. "Yes, we're free. You okay?" "I'm better than okay, just come hungry." When Nash pulled into the driveway of her townhouse, the next evening, yes, townhouse, because she'd quietly moved out of her high-rise apartment the previous week without fanfare or explanation, it was Archer who noticed the change first. "Why's the door blue now?" he asked, hopping out of the truck with his favorite book hugged to his chest. Nash blinked. That's not her old place. Verena opened the front door before they could knock, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She wore jeans and a t-shirt that said Future Engineers Club, probably stolen from some forgotten conference giveaway pile. Nash frowned slightly, eyes scanning the unfamiliar porch. "You moved." She stepped aside to let them in, the scent of roasted garlic and basil wafting from the kitchen. "I needed something less vertical, closer to real life." The inside was cozy, lived-in, eclectic. There were framed sketches on the wall, books stacked 2 rows deep on shelves, and a basket overflowing with tiny socks by the couch. Archer immediately dropped onto a floor cushion and opened his book. Nash remained standing. "You bought this?" She nodded. "Last week." He walked slowly through the open living space, noting the small touches that screamed permanence. A family calendar on the fridge, a kid-height coat rack by the door, a second toothbrush in the bathroom. "You're not just playing house," he said. "No," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm building one." He turned toward her, something unreadable flickering in his expression. For us. For whoever walks through that door and chooses to stay. Dinner was lasagna, salad, and strawberry shortcake, so good Nash nearly forgot how to speak. Archer went back for seconds, then fell asleep on the couch halfway through a movie about time-traveling dinosaurs. Verena covered him with a quilt and returned to the kitchen, where Nash was stacking plates. "You didn't have to cook," he said, drying his hands. "I wanted to." He reached for another dish. "You know, I've been trying to figure out what this is between us, what it means now that I'm not just the guy changing tires." She leaned against the counter, arms folded, and "I think I stopped caring about the labels the second Archer asked if we could invite you to his birthday party." Her lips parted. "He did. Yesterday, drew a picture of you riding a T. Rex said you'd be the best guest ever because you let him win at board games." "I didn't let him. He's terrifying at trivia." Nash laughed, then turned serious. "I want to give him everything. Stability, love, a place to belong. And lately, that place keeps looking a lot like wherever you are." She stepped forward slowly. "Then let's build it together." He nodded, but there was hesitation in his eyes. "You're not going to wake up one day and realize this is too small for you." "Small," she shook her head. "This is the biggest life I've ever had, because finally have something real in it." He set the dish towel down. "I've never done this before, not like this." "Neither have I." His hand brushed hers. "We're going to mess up." "Probably." He leaned in, voice a whisper. "You still want it." She kissed him, soft and certain, more than anything. The next week, Nash started his new job. The hours were longer, but he came home with a different kind of exhaustion, the kind that came from pride, from purpose. Verena visited on weekends, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with new books for Archer, always with that quiet determination in her eyes that made Nash feel like maybe he really was enough. One Thursday afternoon, Verena picked up Archer from school for the first time. She waited outside the gate with a handmade sign that read Dino King, and when he saw her, he ran full speed into her arms. Nash arrived 10 minutes later, having taken an early lunch break to surprise them. "You two having fun without me?" he asked, watching Archer climb into the back seat. "We got smoothies," Verena said, handing him one. "Yours has extra peanut butter." He took a sip, smiling. "I'm starting to think I'm being spoiled." "Get used to it." He glanced at her across the hood of the car. "You're serious, aren't you?" "As a flat tire in the middle of nowhere." He laughed, shaking his head. "You're never going to let me live that down." "Nope." Later that month, on a quiet Sunday, Nash brought Verena to the park where he'd first taken Archer after his ex left. The same bench, the same lake. He knelt in front of her, pulling a small ring box from his jacket pocket. "I don't care about the odds," he said, voice low. "I don't care that we come from different worlds. All I know is that my world doesn't work without you in it." She stared at him, stunned. "You're serious?" "I love you. I love the way you love my son. I love the way you show up. I want to build a life with you, not in some penthouse, not in a storybook. Here, where it's messy, where it's real." Her eyes filled, and her knees buckled slightly as she dropped to the ground with him, grabbing his face between her hands. "Yes." "You didn't even see the ring." "I don't care." He opened the box anyway. Inside was a simple band, gold, set with a single square-cut stone. Elegant, uncomplicated, like them. She took it, sliding it on herself. "It's perfect." Archer, standing a few feet away, shouted, "Did you just get engaged?" They both laughed. "Yes," Nash called back, "and you're the best man." Archer pumped his fists in the air. "Best day ever." They married 6 weeks later in a small ceremony behind Verena's townhouse. No press, no designer gowns, just friends, family, and a kid who insisted on giving the toast with a mouth full of cake. Nash wore a suit that didn't quite fit around the shoulders. Verena wore a dress she'd found in a vintage shop 2 towns over. The vows were imperfect, halting, personal. Nash promised to keep showing up. Verena promised to never run. Archer promised to share his dinosaur figurines sometimes. Afterward, Nash pulled Verena into a slow dance under the string lights strung across the backyard. "Still think I'm just a broke dad with a wrench?" he asked quietly. She leaned into him. "You're the man who changed my life." He looked down at her, eyes full. "You changed mine first." And beneath the stars, surrounded by the life they'd built from spare parts and second chances, they danced. Together. Fully, finally, homed. The morning sun filtered through the linen curtains of the master bedroom, casting golden light across the hardwood floor where Nash's boots had been kicked off the night before. Verena stirred beneath the quilt, her eyes opening slowly to find the other side of the bed empty. A soft clang came from downstairs, followed by the faint melody of humming. She sat up, the ring on her finger catching the light, and smiled. There was coffee brewing. She could smell it, and the scent of cinnamon biscuits, Nash's experimental Saturday breakfast plan. She wrapped herself in the robe he'd left on the foot of the bed and padded down the stairs barefoot. In the kitchen, Nash was leaning over the stove, flipping something in a pan with exaggerated concentration. Flour dusted the front of his shirt, and his hair stuck up in wild tufts like he'd run his hands through it a dozen times already. Archer sat at the island, legs swinging, scribbling on a piece of construction paper. "You're both up early," Verena said, walking in. Archer grinned. "Dad's trying to make biscuits without burning them. It's not going great." Nash glanced over his shoulder, giving her that look he always reserved just for her affection threaded with amusement and just enough awe to make her heart twist. "Had to redeem myself after the pancake disaster." She leaned across the counter to kiss his cheek. "This already smells better." "I followed an actual recipe this time," he said, "though I might have guessed on the measurements." "That explains the 3-foot cloud of flour that greeted me." "Creative cooking," Nash said. "It's a thing." Verena poured herself a cup of coffee and perched on the stool beside Archer. "What are you working on?" He held up the drawing. It was a house, their house, with a garden, a tree house, and a swing set. "I'm designing our backyard. You said we could build one." Nash dropped the spatula and turned around. "We're doing the treehouse next weekend. I already picked up the lumber." Verena blinked. "You didn't tell me that." "I wanted to surprise you," Nash said. "Besides, I figured you'd want to help plan it." "He said I get to pick the secret trapdoor," Archer added. She laughed. "Only if I get to pick the color." "We were thinking green," Nash said, "like a dinosaur hideout." "Of course you were." The biscuits turned out slightly lopsided but delicious, and afterward, they spent the day at the local nursery, choosing plants for the backyard. Archer insisted on sunflowers, and Verena found a small lemon tree she couldn't resist. Nash hauled bags of mulch into the truck, waving off her offer to help. Later that afternoon, while Archer played in the yard, Nash and Verena sat on the back steps, sipping lemonade. "I talked to the site director yesterday," Nash said. "They're offering me a permanent contract, full benefits, even a small budget to hire an apprentice." "That's amazing," Verena said, setting down her glass. "Are you going to take it?" "I already did. I want to build something stable, for us." She rested her head on his shoulder. "You already have." He was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about the wedding, about how fast everything moved." "You regret it?" "Not for a second, but I think we skipped something important." She looked up at him. "What?" I never gave you a honeymoon. Verena blinked. Nash, you didn't have to. I know, he said, but I wanted to, so I talked to your assistant, don't be mad. Her eyes narrowed. What did you do? He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a reservation confirmation. A week in a private villa on the Amalfi Coast. Beachfront, minimal reception, maximum privacy. She stared at it. How did you afford this? I didn't, he said, eyes dancing. You forgot I've been working weekends too. Plus, your assistant said you hadn't taken a real vacation in years. It's time. But what about Archer? He's staying with my sister. He's excited. She promised to let him eat cereal for dinner every night. Verena set the envelope down and cupped Nash's face in her hands. You really planned this. Every detail. Even found a place that serves those little lemon cookies you like. She kissed him slow and deep. You're insane. Completely. And I love you for it. They left 2 weeks later, after packing light and promising Archer they'd FaceTime every night. The flight was long, but Verena didn't care. Not when Nash held her hand the entire way, not when they landed to find a driver holding a sign with their names on it. The villa was perched on a cliffside, with sweeping views of the ocean and a private path to a secluded beach. The walls were whitewashed, the windows open to the sound of waves, and the bed faced the sea like it had been designed for dreamers. They spent the mornings wandering cobbled streets, tasting fresh mozzarella and gelato. Afternoons were for swimming and napping in hammocks. Evenings were candlelit dinners on the terrace, where Nash always found a way to touch her hand, her cheek, her knee beneath the table. One night, after a dinner of grilled swordfish and lemon risotto, Verena stepped onto the balcony in a linen dress, her hair loose from the sea breeze. Nash stood there waiting, holding 2 glasses of Prosecco. I've been thinking, he said, handing her one. That's dangerous. He laughed. I used to think I had to be everything to everyone, that if I didn't hold everything together, it would all fall apart. But loving you taught me that I don't have to do it alone. She leaned against the railing. You never did. I just didn't know it until you. They toasted beneath the stars, and later made love with the windows open and the ocean whispering through the room. Back home, things didn't change in dramatic ways, but everything felt steadier, easier. Archer adjusted beautifully, splitting time between school, weekend treehouse construction, and helping Nash organize his tools with military precision. Verena began mentoring young women from underfunded schools, helping them navigate the world of tech and entrepreneurship. She hosted workshops in the community center, using her connections to quietly open doors that had once been closed to her. Nash built a team around him, hiring a local kid named Ethan as his apprentice. The boy reminded him of himself at 17, quiet, eager, a little lost. Nash taught him how to use a level, how to measure twice, how to show up even when no one claps. One evening, while they sat on the porch watching Archer race around the yard in a cape, Verena looked over at Nash. Do you ever miss the quiet? He glanced at the chaos unfolding in the backyard. Archer had convinced the neighbor's dog to wear a cardboard helmet and was now attempting to train it to pull a wagon. No, Nash said. I used to think peace was silence, but it's this. This is peace. She threaded her fingers through his. You still owe me a rematch. At what? Board games. You've been letting Archer win. I want a real challenge. He grinned. You're on. That night, they played until the power went out from a blown transformer down the street. They lit candles, made popcorn on the stove, and told ghost stories until Archer fell asleep in a pile of pillows. Later, curled up on the couch, Verena rested her head on Nash's chest. Do you think we'll ever stop surprising each other? She asked. I hope not. She tilted her head to look up at him. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd fall for a man who changed my tire in the middle of nowhere, I would have laughed. And if someone had told me I'd marry a woman who owned a tech empire and still made time to learn the names of every kid in Archer's class, you would have panicked. Absolutely. She laughed and he kissed her forehead. They fell asleep there, wrapped around each other, the storm outside fading to a soft drizzle. And in the mornings the world began again, bright, full, whole. Together, forever.